This is the DTV Digest, the podcast that brings you news and reviews of films which didn't make it to the cinema. And now, here's your host, Mike Parkin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the DTV Digest. I'm your host, Mike Parkin, and joining me tonight are Richard Hawes.
Hello, everyone.
And Stephen Lockridge.
Hello.
This week, we're covering four main reviews. We have the latest film from Neil Marshall called Duchess. Then we have a period set horror film called Thine Ears Shall Bleed. John Travolta turns up in Cash Out. And then we have a film from New Zealand called Loop Track. Our short shot is the latest short from Jim Cummings called Is Now a Good Time? And then we wind up with our DTV throwback, El Chicano. So without further ado, let's crack on. Our first film then is Duchess. Scarlett, a tough beauty from London's East End, falls in love with the mysterious Robert, joining his close-knit crew of diamond smugglers and given the name Duchess. When the team is fatally double-crossed, Duchess leads them on a path of blood-soaked retribution. Cool. I think the thing that really sort of sticks out with this film is the accent of Duchess. Played by
Charlotte Kirk.
Charlotte Kirk, who is appeared in a couple of Neil Marshall's films before. She was the lead in The Lair and that other one he did, the one about the witch hunting.
The Reckoning.
The Reckoning.
Reckoning,
That was it. Yeah, I knew what it was. But also, there's a couple of other familiar faces in here. We've got Sean Pertwee, who's it seems to be just about everything that Neil Marshall does. And of course, then we've got Cole Meany, Stephanie Beecham, and an actor I really like is Philip Winchester. Seen him in the latest
Strike Back, wasn't it?
He was in Strike Back. He was in Prey, the one with Megan Fox, and he recently in the one with John Voight. I forgot the name of the film now. It sounds as good as Shadowland. Shadowland, I think it was called.
Yeah.
One where John Voight is an ex-president, sort of losing his marbles, and he played.
I'm not familiar with that one.
It's by the guy who did Jade.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, it's the Air Force. It came out around the same time as Air Force One Down.
Yeah. Just got it recently. Anyway, yeah, good cast. And you would be forgiven for thinking, Charlotte Kirk. It's only when you realise that actually she has been in these other films, and this isn't her natural accent, that you kind of sort of settle in a bit and go, yes, she's playing a character. This isn't just some weird sort of East End girl sort of been thrust into an action movie. And I really like the story. I think it sort of holds together really well. It's a little bit different to what you usually see, the way it's structured and everything. So I really, really enjoyed this, and I'll talk more about it in a bit. But first, over to Steve. What did you make of Duchess?
It was all right. It's not. I don't know if it's just Neil Marshall at the minute after all the shit that went down with Hellboy, but he seems to have really regressed in his career at the minute. I don't know. He just seems to be doing just DTV stuff all the time at the minute, and I don't know. I expect him to be churning out something just a bit better than this. It's not terrible, but I just can't put me. Like you say, it's a bit all over the place. I mean, the action's quite good. But he shot the action well, but a lot of it's derivative. You know what's coming. It's quite cliched, I thought. It was. I enjoyed Stephanie Beecham.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's really good in this. Yeah,
effing and jeffing all over the place, which I thought was a nice. Not something you expect from her. Quite a different role for her, but yeah, just. I say Sean Pertwee, just your hard man lackey like usual, and it didn't ring true, I think, is the way I saw it, going from this little pit pocket to like running a diamond cartel. It just didn't ring true. I just thought it was a little bit too far-fetched, to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
But enjoyable in places, it wasn't awful, I don't know. I think because he's Neil Marshall and Charlotte Kirk are together now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they're engaged or, but they are partners. And he just, a lot of people do it, but he's putting her in everything at the minute. Everything he's doing. And did she get a writing credit on it as well? I think she did. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously they're working together a lot, and he's putting her in most of his last three, definitely. I just don't think it's where his talents really lie, if you know what I mean. I think he could be doing better than this.
Interesting. Okay, Rich, what did you make of Duchess?
I liked it quite a lot. It's it's very much, British gangster movie kind of thing is its closest of a little relation that, people who like the Rise of the Foot Soldier films and stuff, they're going to go for that, gangster kind of feel, and
British gangsters abroad sort of thing.
Yeah, the sort of down and dirty, common folk kind of thing. The setting changing from London to Tenerife. I think it's Tenerife, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so that made me think of like some of the recent Foot Soldier films and stuff, which have done a similar thing. And there's an element of some of the characterization is similar in aspects, so that there's the girl who's sort of the girl on the arm kind of thing, but she's got like sort of she's got a bit more going on and she's a bit more scheming and stuff. There's a little bit of that, but obviously that's our sort of principal character and a bit more sympathetic. But they're all anti-hero kind of characters. They're all bad guys basically, and you've got to kind of latch on, and you've got to kind of get to you've got to kind of go along for the ride with them. So therefore they have to bring in somebody who's a bit worse for them to go up against, so that you can really get on board with them. So all that is absolutely fine. Don't mind that. I thought it was stylishly shot. I think it's Neil Marshall doing Guy Ritchie, which is a bit interesting. It seems like he's doing somebody else's style of movie rather than kind of what, his
the
own.
voiceover stuff is new, isn't it? Basically, in the sort of top start.
Well, there's all those sort of features of films we've seen before. What I thought was interesting when I was watching it was like there's a couple of things that I know you, Mike, don't like, and then I thought, well, actually, there's a couple of things I know you do like here. So we've got like the in media res, the character name freeze frames, like throughout the whole movie they introduce a new character. Even towards the end, they have to get a title card, whatever, and then but then you've also got some fight, got a fight in the kitchen, fight in a lift and stuff, which is quite cool to see. I like seeing, having Stephanie Beacham gives that, sort of, this is a film from a credible team anyway. Neil Marshall has got dog soldiers and everything all on the back of him. But, Stephanie Beacham, bringing her in, we saw her in Renegades a while back. It's nice to see her in another action movie. She's really giving her all. She's famous as one of the most famous sort of bitchy actress sort of characters from like Dynasty and stuff. I think she was bitchy in that, wasn't she? Because I always used to get her. I always used to get her and like Joan Collins and everyone all kind of confused, because there was this period where British actresses were going to America and being in these like soaps and stuff. Or soapy dramas. Anyway, so Stephanie Beacham, she's fantastic. Nice to see her. Sean Pertwee, I'm a big fan of. I think he was a bit wasted for most of the film, but luckily they do kind of do something with him at the end. I've always loved Sean Pertwee, even going back to all of his early films like Blue Juice and stuff. I just think he's got a really great presence, just like his father, and I love seeing him turn up all over the place. He's had one of those really interesting careers. What else? Yeah, so the film itself's got that Guy Ritchie vibe, but I also think the film, in terms of its style and humor and budget level and stuff, also made me think a lot of Accident Man 2, in terms of also with the location, moving it to because that was Malta.
That was
so
Malta,
got that warm location and all these characters that they're introducing and stuff. So I think this is kind of a film that is almost a bit between like a Guy Ritchie movie, like even something like the recent release, Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, which has just recently been released, direct to Prime, and the Operation Fortune film that he did as well. It's similar somewhere between the two of those, and also say Accident Man 2, a little bit of the British gangster, foot soldier kind of stuff going in there. I think there's a lot to appeal here. It's got that 70s style score and sort of funky heist music kind of aesthetic thing going on. It definitely sort of a little nod to the 1960s and 70s from the title card onwards. I think one of the problems I had with it was that Duchess herself, although I understand the journey of her character, she is on the sidelines for a good chunk of the film, and it kind of is mostly about the guys that she's tagging along with, and they're getting on with stuff, and she's kind of just sort of in the background or commenting on things and stuff. I felt the movie kind of lost her for a bit, and luckily when the third act sort of kicks in, then it becomes more her focus, her story. She's kind of the principal agent of the story, whereas say previously she was kind of white knighted. She was rescued, and this guy is going to look after her and all this sort of stuff, and she's kind of so yeah, I didn't have a problem, but I liked it. I think there's a lot. I think it's probably the Neil Marshall film that I've enjoyed most recently. I haven't seen Reckoning, but I did watch The Lair, which didn't really stick in the mind. Yeah, we covered it.
Yeah, of course.
But I think this has a lot to recommend. It has had alongside its DCV release, it's had a very limited theatrical exposure as well, which I think is warranted. I think it's a film that was shot really well, probably would look really good on the limited number of screens it was probably put in over the weekend that it came out. I think if you're a fan of gangster movies, British sort of that sort of stuff, I think you will really enjoy it.
No, I totally agree. I really did like this. Yes, there are a couple of things which in media res is the first, as you mentioned, the title cards, but we do get a good fight in the kitchen, a good fight in the lift, which is all good, action movie staples as far as I'm concerned. And there are some really good character beats in this as well, from Charlotte Kirk. But when they go to visit Stephanie Beacham's character Charlie, and they're put in this situation where she's got this guy in a chair, and she's sort of beat him up and that. And there's a really cool moment where Duchess is sat there, and she's got this sort of glass of scotch or whatever in her hand. Her hand's visibly shaking, but she sort of gets a grip of herself basically. You can actually see her hands just sort of like get calmer and calmer and calmer as she sort of like goes, no, I'm dealing with this kind of thing. And it is a sort of pretty nasty sort of Colombian necktie scenario that we get, but it does sort of say a lot about the character. And there's a bit towards when she's now in charge of the gang, and just the look on her face as she's sort of like interrogating this guy. I think it was a really, really good bit of acting. Basically, just sort of, all the emotions just sort of drained out of her face. It's just all business. I thought she did really well. I thought she handled, or they did a good job of putting her in the action. And then we got the likes of sort of Sean Pertwee and Philip Winchester sort of handling most of it. I thought Philip Winchester he did cut a good, a good leading man. He's got a bit of suave, a bit of swagger to him. Looks good in a dress shirt with the open collar sort of thing. He's got a sort of look. I thought this was very solid. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. So
I liked Hoji Hoji Fortuna as Baraka, I thought was really good as well. You know, he's kind of one of the crew, but again, he could have been just one of a character who they just sort of have there, and he just kind of fires the gun or whatever, or runs the game. They actually do something with his character, which I thought was good, and that
the whole bit with the tiger, that was really cool, actually.
Yeah, and we've also got I don't know if you're familiar with him, but a guy called Colin Egglesfield plays Tom. He's kind of most well known, I think, as he used to do like soap operas and stuff, but he's appeared in various things. The thing I most took note of him for was you remember John Carpenter's Vampires?
Yeah.
Well, there was a third one that came out, which it was like one of those films where it's like, is this linked to that? Because it doesn't seem related to it, but I'm pretty sure it was just very tangentially a part of that series called Vampires: The Turning, and he was the lead in that, which was quite interesting. It was shot in Thailand, so it was like a Thai Asian vampire kind of themed kind of film. So not amazing, but an interesting one to check out. And I just always thought Colin Egglesfield had that kind of Tom Cruise kind of quality to him, which I think he still does, and he's quite good in this as well.
Interesting. 2004 that came out.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Awesome. Okay, scores on the doors. Steve?
I'll give it a 6.
And Rich?
I could see myself watching it again, and despite some reservations, I'm going to give it an 8.
Yeah, I'm going to join him. Even though, as you say, a couple of reservations, couple of my bugbears in this, but also a couple of the sort of action staples I like. Good characters all around, good bit of acting. Thoroughly enjoyed it. So 8 out of 10. So 2 8s and a 6 for Duchess. Go check it out. Our next film is Thine Ears Shall Bleed. A pastor and his family find themselves trapped in a forest where they start to hear strange sounds which the pastor attributes to none other than God himself. This is sort of set during the, 1700s, 1800s, I imagine.
I think it's 1860s.
1860s, yeah. So, the whole Oregon Trail, that sort of thing. This family, this religious family, have been and bought a new organ for their church, and are sort of transporting it by wagon. And they camp for the night in this woods. When they wake up, their horses have disappeared, and there's this weird sound coming from this chasm, and they attribute it to the sound of God. When you see it, when you hear it, you can kind of see it, because it is this sort of big, powerful sound that almost blows their eardrums out. It would have never heard anything like that in the past. I found it to be quite stilted to begin with, Steve. Because we're sort of like dealing with a particular period, and they're trying to sort of keep to the same cadence and language of the period and the sort of diction. It does come across as very stagey to begin with, but that's sort of like you kind of get used to it after a while, and it sort of doesn't bother you, or didn't bother me as much. And instead you got this sort of weird thing going on, which I must admit I got quite a lot out of. I did enjoy this one. What did you make of it?
I didn't like this at all. I'll be honest. I know what you're saying. Like you said, the language and it's very, very slow. I'm not big onto like the religious piousness and stuff like that. Like it bugs me. I'll be honest. And like you said, the language and the performances and the way it was delivered, it just didn't grab me at all. And I thought it was quite slow moving. Nothing. I mean, you get a couple of these supposed miracles, like the son, blindness is suddenly cured, and the daughters.
The burn wound, isn't it?
Yeah. No, but that's about it. And you get the noise, and I'll be honest, the priest was just so annoying.
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, it's supposed to be, don't get me wrong, but it just didn't sit well with me. I just found it boring, and nothing really happens till the last 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. It was, and I thought it was too long. I mean, it's a good an hour and 40 minutes.
Hmm.
You could cut at least 20 minutes out of there. I think it'd be, a lot better pace and a lot better to be fair.
Just a lot better.
Yeah, it just didn't sit well with me. I weren't that impressed with it, to be fair.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah, so this is from a guy called Ben Bigelow. This is his first film. From the looks of it, he's got a lot of his sort of family members involved in it as well.
Mm.
And I think it is a case of, sort of first film issue where it's your precious thing, and you want to keep you filmed all this stuff and you want to keep it in, I guess. But you're right, it could be shorter, that's for sure. There's elements I did like. I mean, well, I liked a lot of it, as I said, but the whole thing with the mum when she wanders off to try, and ends up in this sort of like weird loop, coming back to the same place over and over again. Thought that was pretty cool. I like the introduction of the fifth character. Fifth character. So at first you take him at face value, and then as things develop, you sort of realise that actually there's a bit more going on there.
Yeah.
So that was all good. The resolution I'm not entirely satisfied with, I must admit.
Yeah, that was a bit. Nothing is specifically said to me, but it's hinted at who he is, and I don't know.
Yeah, no, there's some of the shots as well when they go up to that ridge, and you see how damn high it is. That location was absolutely amazing. So yeah, I loved all that. You're right. It is too long. There's only 5 characters. There's only so much you can do with them in a single location, and so I did feel you're right. It was sort of dragged out, but I did like it. I liked it a lot. I like the whole thing about the he's like, oh, this is going to be the new sign of the church kind of thing, and then you don't see what it is until later on. It's like, okay, that kind of makes sense now. It's all good. Yeah, so I enjoyed it. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. How about yourself?
I'm giving it a 5.
5, no worries. A 5 and a 7 for Thine Ears Shall Bleed. And I must admit, it's quite funny going into this. Going into this blind, as it were, because I didn't know what it was going to be about or anything. I was imagining it was going to be about some sort of death metal band, or something, So I was quite surprised what it turned out to be. Yes, as I said, a 5 and a 7 for Thine Ears Shall Bleed. Go check it out. Our next film is Cash Out. Professional thief Mason is dragged out of retirement when his brother gets his old crew involved in a messy bank heist. Trapped inside and surrounded by law enforcement, things start to get interesting when the police negotiator turns out to be Mason's ex-girlfriend. This is an interesting one. When the credits started at the beginning, or the production credits started at the beginning,
or the media capital again.
Well, this is it. I saw, because it had Highland, what they called, Highland Media?
Highland Media Group, yeah.
Yeah. So I saw them and I thought, okay, they're kind of chalk and cheese. Half the stuff works, half the stuff doesn't. And I'm thinking, I wonder if Bondit Media Capital can be tied to this as well. And lo and behold, right at the end of the production credits, there they are. There's a lot of people involved in this one, lots of different production companies coming together to make this. And I think for the most part, it works. this is probably one of Bondit's biggest films I've been involved in. It looks great overall. There is way too much use of drone cameras, way too much. But definitely influenced by Michael Bay's Ambulance. This one.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, a mixture. I'd say a mixture of that and late period Tony Scott. Because
it's one of the quite distinctive parts of the film is that they pepper it with these moments, which I think have been created with like AI or CG or something, where they've taken some actual footage and then they make it move so quickly and impossibly that it must be computer generated. But for the most part, I think, although it does look a bit computery, it's not too bad.
It's not.
Really?
No, it's not.
No.
It is. It's a lot better than some of the sort of silly, sort of avid fart kind of editing tricks we've seen from this sort of budget film before.
I mean, it's completely unnecessary. It's weird that it just sort of takes you out of the film bit when it happens, but it's sort of interesting that they've tried that.
It's like the Tony Scott thing of like, well, if you've got a long dialogue piece, don't leave the camera sitting still. Produce some action when there's no action, kind of thing. It's that sort of attitude. So even when people are just sort of stalking around, corridors and things like, no, let's get the cameras zooming past people and all this sort of stuff. But anyway, other than that, we have John Travolta. Yeah, late period John Travolta, doing pretty well for himself in this one. I thought he led the film very well. He's sort of like forced to get back involved in this thing. It's a bit like Nicolas Cage in Gone in 60 Seconds kind of thing. Just when he thinks he's out, he's dragged back in because of some hothead stupid mistake by his brother. But I did enjoy this. I thought it was well put together. I thought it made, the heist and everything was sensible. There wasn't anything stupid going on. There's no histrionics. This was a professional crew doing a professional job. Even his ex-girlfriend's going, well, at least we know the hostages are safe because such and such is looking after them. There's no stupidity going on within the crew. Everyone's doing their job properly, and you actually get the feeling that yes, this is a proper crew. It's not someone, time and time again you see this sort of film and there's some nut job in the middle of it sort of causing shit when they shouldn't be. So I was quite impressed with all that sort of stuff, and I liked the way things developed. So I was on board with this. It's probably, there's only a handful of Bondit media films I can sort of say I actually enjoyed watching, and this is certainly one of them. Steve, what do you make of Cash Out?
Yeah, it's all right. Like I said, Travolta's solid. Kristen Davis is pretty solid. Yeah, because it kind of reminded me of Inside Man at first, Spike Lee film. But like you say, there's no histrionics. There's no dickhead kicking off. They're respectful to the hostages. It's like, look, just sit down, just chill. We'll get you out of here. And then you've got is it Mr. Flowers or something turning up? Who's like, the faceless bad guys rep. And then you realise what the real actually going to be going after, what the stakes are. And that just gives you a little bit extra. And I thought, it was done really well. Like I said, it is a little bit, not messy, but like you say, it's not one of the films that ever sits still. There's always, like I say, something moving or the camera's zooming here and there and everywhere and stuff like that. But to be fair, it did kind of work up with this. Because the actual heist itself isn't really, violent or over the top or anything. It's quite subdued. And that was pretty decent in a way. But yeah, all in all, it's pretty solid. Yeah. More solid than I thought it was going to be be fair.
Yeah. This is directed by Randall Emmett, who we've covered a couple of his previous films. Midnight in
King of the Geezer teaser.
Yeah, exactly. He did one of the better ones, which was Midnight in the Switchgrass with Megan Fox and Bruce. And he also did Savage Salvation, which I believe we covered, which had Robert De Niro playing a cop on the trail of the guy who's like basically wiping out a drug den responsible for the death of his girlfriend. So which was kind of like almost like it felt like two movies in one kind of thing. You know, it was like Robert De Niro was in his own film and the other guy was in his own film, and they kind of a little bit meshed at the end. But interestingly, they're making a sequel to this. Cash Out 2 High Rollers, which is in post-production. So, you know, obviously they thought a lot of it. Rich, what did you make of Cash Out?
Yeah, I did quite like it. I think the whole Rand Lemmet thing is quite interesting because, you know, the documentary came out, you know, and his credibility and everything is all shot to hell, and yeah, he's kind of a toxic kind of person to be kind of associated, and even he recognizes that because he's credited himself under a pseudonym of Ives, and I presume he'll continue to use that. I'm surprised actually they're making a sequel because I thought that this might be his last bow, but it seems like he's going to be hanging in there. Yeah, I thought what surprised me was that, you know, as with, you know, this kind of bucks the trend on the geezer teaser kind of thing, because in another, you know, he's sort of latched onto John Travolta for this one, but you know, it's very similar to a lot of the other films that we've seen, like Wire Room or Hot Seat and Fortress and all that sort of thing. But you do get a lot of John Travolta. He's a consistent presence throughout the film. He's not just popping in and out.
Yeah,
he is part of an ensemble. We do spend time with other characters, which is kind of par for the course with a lot of these kind of things. But it's not like they're giving him top billing, but he's actually only going to appear in a handful of scenes or something. So it's following a very familiar kind of formula that he's been using to survive the game and all that sort of stuff. You know, get all these different characters, lots of different actors playing different characters all together, anchor it with one particular star. But the difference here is the star is the star. So we've actually we're not being misled in any way with this one, which I think works to its favor. It takes a little bit. Well, for me, it took a while to get going. There's the whole prologue with stealing the sports car and stuff, and the relationship, setting up the relationship with Kristen Davis from Sex and the City, and I guess the new series, the spin-off series from that she's in as well. I can't remember what they called that now, but I've not watched it anyway. So yeah, so kind of setting up her. I didn't really like those scenes. I thought they seemed like really forced and awkward a bit. But I think when that prologue is out of the way and the film settles to its, you know, under siege and, you know, things in a single location kind of setup, the fact that they can then film people separately and stuff with that setup, you know, as a siege thing, they can do all their scenes remotely and stuff, I think, you know, works to the film's benefit. Again, like Hot Seat and stuff with the Mel Gibson scenes and everything like that. There's very little that I sort of complain about. I mean, going back to what I was saying about Duchess, you know, you kind of got bad guys as the hero, you know, this group of bad guys, and then you have to put them up against somebody who's potentially worse. So they do the same thing here, but they don't really dwell on the worse. They kind of introduce them and stuff, and it's there, but they very much stay focused on our anti-heroes and their experience, which again, I think that works quite well, rather than sort of bringing in a sort of heavy-handed bad guy character. They kind of just imply a lot, really, with that, and they focus more on the heist situation. Now, one of the distracting things is they get this bank manager guy, and you know, they take him hostage, and they take him into the bank and whatever, and get him to open the vault and all that sort of thing. Well, for me, he looks like he could be John Travolta's son. He just looks so much like John Travolta. He's not. He's a Swedish guy called Sven Tamil, I think. He's done quite a few films of this kind. He's been around a while. but yeah, no connection to John Travolta as far as I'm aware. But it's funny just them playing scenes together, and it just seems really. Sure, you're not related. It's like he also looks a bit like Tom Cruise as well, so he's kind of a little bit of a Tom. He's a handsome guy. He's got the good look. I could see him moving into again a bit like Colin Egglesfield, moving into those sort of leading roles every now and again, rather than just sort of playing supporting characters. But he was quite good as the sort of unknown quantity of the group, because you got Lucas Haas in there, very accomplished actor from his youth. But all these people, Lucas Haas, John Travolta, they've all been around. They've been around since the 80s. We got Noel G. He goes by various names as Hector in the group. He's going to appear later, coincidentally, in one of the other films that we're going to talk about. He's a character actor. He's always basically playing a bit like Robert Lasardo. He's kind of always playing gangstery kind of characters and whatever. But I always enjoy seeing him. He always brings a little bit something different to the film. So I enjoyed seeing him pop up in the team. So I think the film doesn't overextend its reach. It's kind of, it's working to a formula. It knows that formula. Emmett's done so many of these films now as a producer, but he's on comfortable ground in the director's chair and producing it. So I was quite surprised. It is a bit of a sitting in chairs movie. So we did get a lot of Travolta sitting in various chairs and having conversations on the phone.
But the dialogue's better. The acting's better. It's not the sort of chore that we had with things like Hot Seat, and films like that. It just sort of. It was on a sort of higher tier, I think. Than
it's a comfortable watch. Yeah. There's nothing overly necessary to criticize. I think the timestamps could have done with being removed for the most part. I didn't really feel they were necessary, but I do understand why they were there. But the film it starts off feeling a bit cheap. The credits are quite cheaply done, and some of the locations and everything. But it is, this is what we're in. This is low budget territory. It's quite familiar ground. John Travolta though seems quite comfortable. He isn't just passing over. I think he's actually making an effort, as I think he does in most of his films. I mean, he does get a bit of a kicking. We did an episode where we covered quite a few.
We did a whole sort of Travolta thing, and he was putting in a different performance in every film that he does. So,
I do think, despite working in these lower, but I think he's probably one of the actors who's making more of an effort than some others. Let's say. I think I've not. I mean, he's got low. I mean, he's working hard. There was a film called Mobland that I'm quite interested to see that he did. He did. He's done some action stuff, and Paradise City I still need to see, which he did with Bruce Willis. I'm not sure whether that's gonna. I've got worse feelings about that one, although it is directed by Chuck Russell, so I've got some hopes. But yeah, I'm actually always generally pleasantly surprised when I watch a John Travolta film, even though he's not an actor that I gravitate towards usually. I mean, this is if you think of like the 90s, and you got him and Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage has kind of really come back now. He's done his DTV stuff, and he still does the odd bit, but he's very much back in cinemas and stuff now. Nicolas Cage is such a strong brand again. Travolta kind of already had his chance at the comeback with Pulp Fiction and everything, and now he's kind of gone back again. I'd be very surprised if he gets another break like that, but I wouldn't put it past him. I think he's still got it in him.
Absolutely. Right then, scores on the doors. So Steve,
I'll give this a 7.
A 7, and Rich.
Yeah, I'm happy to give this one a 7.
Yeah, 3 7s then for Cash Out. Go check it out. Our next film is Loop Track. Mild-mannered Ian wants nothing more than to get away from it all, including people, by taking a 4-day trek around one of New Zealand's many forests. However, even here, he's not far from people, and Ian has trust issues. I saw this one, Steve, last year at Mayhem, not Nottingham Film Festival. It was the last film of the of the festival. I thought this was great. It's so interesting. This idea of going for a 4-day hike. I mean, their trails are so long that they have to have, camping stations for people to sort of camp out at. And these paths are sort of well worn, and signposts and everything. They really look after it. I just can't imagine anything of this standard in England. I go for walks along the Peak District and things with my wife, and we're constantly having to ask people, going, "Is this the right way to this bit?" All this sort of stuff. So you got this guy, and at first, he's not a very likable character. Ian, he's very insulated. He doesn't, he's quite prickly. He doesn't want to sort of be with anyone, and he meets probably the worst person he could meet on his hike. This guy called Ricky, I think it's Ricky, who's a real sort of outdoorsy kind of guy. Sort of like what Nicky is, and typical sort of surfer, rock climber, all this sort of stuff going on. He's probably the worst person that Ian wants to bunk into, and there are sort of a few others as well. And it's a weird story because for a long period you're not really sure what's going on, or if anything is going on, and if it's all just in Ian's head as it's going on. And you even don't know if anything is going on. Maybe it's Ian that's doing it. It really sort of plays with your expectations up to a point until it gets to a point of the story where it's like, well, we can't piss around anymore. We have to sort of like push things, because we're getting close to the end of the trail, kind of thing. And were you surprised with what it ended up being?
Right, I will state from the start. I hated this.
You hated it?
I hated it.
Oh dear.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not right. It's an hour and 34 minutes.
Yep.
I'm looking at it now.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing happens until the last 10 minutes.
You're right.
That last 10 minutes came out of nowhere, was totally ridiculous. And I just felt so angry and annoyed.
Oh dear!
Honestly, I know where I've had issues with films where it flips and something just comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, we've discussed that before.
Yeah, this is one of them because no, it just literally I can't. I'm getting angry now just thinking about it. I can't. The twist or whatever you want to call it comes out of nowhere, literally out of nowhere. There's no indication apart from this Ian saying, "I'm sure something's following. We're being followed by something. There's someone behind us or whatever." And there's no explanation. There's nothing. It just happens, and even the hour leading up to it, was just, again, not. The worst thing that happens is he finds the two girls go wandering and stay out for the night, and he's looking through their camera, and none of the characters are particularly likable. Which, okay, I get that sometimes it works, but in this it doesn't, because there's only them 4 characters really, and it just drags like a sealed bollocks. It's so.
No, yeah, I don't know. I disagree. I had the opposite. I was quite caught up in the mystery of it, or the half mystery of it, because as you say, nothing is really happening as such. Apart from what's in Ian's head and what he's imagining is happening. The girls stay out. So he thinks, "Oh my God, they must be dead or something." He goes through their stuff and finds.
But that's what I mean. Yeah. You've got no, background to why he'd behave like that.
You don't. You're right. And the thing is that is probably the one thing the film is missing is any sort of context, because when you first meet him, he seems to be really nervous, and I'm thinking, has he just lost his job? That's kind of what I'm thinking, is that he wants to get away from it all.
I'm kind of thinking, is he some mild-mannered killer on the run or something like that?
Yeah, needs to lay low for a bit, so go to the most remote place he can think of.
But I think if you had some context, it'd make it better. But you don't get anything, and even the ending is so abrupt as well.
You still don't know. Yeah, you still don't know at the end. Yeah, I was able to forgive it that though, I must admit, because after what that was bugging me to begin with. I'm thinking, is he ever gonna sort of confess to, like, I had a mental breakdown at work or something, which is why you never find out what it is that drove him, because he is very much a fish out of water, isn't he? He doesn't belong on that loop trail, whereas the other characters are all up for it. He seems, he hasn't have the right gear or anything. He's
exactly. It's like he's rushed up there.
Yeah. So there
on a
is,
whim.
Yeah, exactly. But other than that, I thought I don't know, it just clicked with me. I just got engrossed by it. Sort of the chalk and cheese nature of him and Nikki, and then meeting the girls. There is a funny bit where he's drinking the stream water, and he's going, they're going, no, I don't think you should do that because it's weird shit in the water. And he's going, oh, don't worry, I got a stomach like a sealed drum or something. And then the next day he's like, oh, I got the shits.
Yeah.
But anyway, no, pity you didn't like this one. I certainly did. So what are you going to score it?
I'll give it a 3.
A 3? Oh my god!
Honestly,
it really didn't like it.
Pissed me off.
Well, this is from a guy called Thomas Sainsbury. It's his first feature. He's done a few shorts before, quite a few shorts, in fact. But yeah, so it's his first feature. I thought it was different. Did enjoy it a lot. There's a couple of things, as you said, a bit more context would have helped, like the characters a bit more, I think, or especially Ian. But I'm giving this a 7 out of 10. So quite a wide spectrum for this one. A 3 and a 7 for Loop Track. Go check it out. Our short shot this week is now a good time. A Disney employee arrives at a terminally ill kid's house to show him the latest Captain America movie. So this is the latest film from Jim Cummings, someone we know very well and admire for his works. So this one, it's interesting. He's playing this character, trying to be positive. It must be a horrible job to go to this kid's house and enthusiastically try and get him to watch this film, and then having to deal with the aftermath of it. Basically, it is quite amusing. It says a lot about Disney, and about the whole sort of Marvel, or the whole superhero sort of movie culture and everything. It is quite amusing. It goes off in a very different direction at the end, for sure. But yeah, Rich, over to you first for this one. Bit more context from you.
Jim Cummings is, I say, quite very well established as both a director of feature films and short films. I think he's released a couple of shorts lately. This one really caught the eye because it's got that Marvel theme to it. The film has, so like you say, he's a representative of Disney Marvel, and he's going to take Captain America, the screening of Captain America 4. Which I thought was quite interesting because when the film this came out about 3 weeks ago, it kind of dovetailed quite closely with the release of the actual Captain America 4 trailer. So it kind of it's stepping around, trying to be specific, and they're saying, we can't talk about elements of it and all that sort of thing. And they also, although he's saying he's from Disney Marvel, there's a lot of Marvel posts, what are supposed to be the Marvel movie posters in the kid's bedroom, whatever, which are all like parody versions or spoof or off-brand. It's like copies. So it's kind of like I think they sort of edged close, but they didn't want to sort of go too far. so they could have just spoofed it and just changed the name of the company entirely, and left those posters on the wall with the slightly different names and stuff. But I think this is a film where Jim Cummings is trying to make a very explicit point, very explicit as it comes to. But because it's a satirical situation, but then he ends up having an odd conversation with which apparently the kid asks a question which is articulated through his mother, which then is all about representation in the Marvel Disney Marvel movies, and him trying to step around the awkwardness of the question while sort of being trying to represent the company, but also trying to say what he thinks within the boundaries of what he thinks is appropriate. And it's an awkward thing for him to deal with, and then something happens that then sort of really hits the nail on the head, and so it's makes the day that much harder for him. It's 11 minutes, just over, sort of 11 and a half minutes, and it covers quite a lot of ground. I think if it's interesting to watch the sort of comedy sort of situation element of it, the tragicomic element, the sort of statement stuff that he's making, talking about how the issues of representation, I thought was quite interesting. That was probably my favorite element. And then he kind of caps that off at the end with a sequence. It's like it's kind of the point of what he's trying to make is now a good time? Is anybody ready for this kind of thing? Yeah, and I think that's what the film is really about. But I did really like all the all the satirical nods and that to the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah, no, I did as well. So, you had a gay character in the Eternals. We go, yes, but he was black, which was quite amusing. It was quite funny.
Yeah.
And I can certainly see, they capture the awkwardness of the situation perfectly and manage to sort of mine some humor out of it.
I think what's interesting here is with some of the stuff, what the points that he's making and where the film goes. Over here in the UK, we've kind of already gone there because Doctor Who and Torchwood and stuff like that have really pushed, what could be. I mean, especially because Russell T Davies came over from Queer as Folk, where he'd already sort of laid the groundwork, and then he kind of started to put, not necessarily into Doctor Who, but when they did Torchwood, there was some really quite mature episodes there, and the DTV Doctor Who stuff, which I've passingly mentioned on the show, has involved people like the Mark Gatiss and Reece Shearsmith from the League of Gentlemen and stuff. They've kind of pushed elements of say homosexual themes and scenes in those films, which wouldn't have happened a while ago. I think it's kind of backtracked a little bit on itself now, because Torchwood got cancelled and all that sort of thing. But I think they've attempted it anyway, and I think, I'm not sure what's happening with Doctor Who in terms of representation and stuff now, but I think the Marvel Cinematic Universe is quite far behind, still quite far behind, and I think I think he's making a really valid, very interesting point, and you only have to go and watch. I watched one of the superhero movies recently where it was trying to do different elements of representation, but in terms of racial representation, say something like the Marvels, for example, and Blue Beetle, or Shang-Chi, You know, they're doing the films like that, but they're not being very successful. So therefore, they're sort of backtracking. They're sort of staying with the, you know, white heterosexual characters and stuff. I think is now a good time. Is now has a number of different meanings there. So is now a good time to have this conversation, which is what he's trying to open up. He's trying to get people to talk about it. I think it definitely is. Is now a good time for the audience to be, you know, challenged on some of their what they're expecting from films. I think it's debatable. I think a lot of people aren't going to be ready so for some of the stuff, and but yeah, definitely always worth a discussion. And Jim Cummings proving that he's again one of the sort of filmmakers on the cutting edge of, you know, independent filmmaking and, you know, conversation starting.
Absolutely, yeah. This certainly had some interesting moments. I agree.
Yeah.
So it would have less of an impact over here than possibly in the States, where they don't quite have that. You know, I mean, I think it's different for sort of female gay stuff. That's a bit more sort of mainstream. But certainly, you know, sort of male gay representation is probably less. Especially, you can have like the funny gay characters, but not so much, you know, putting the actual, you know, the sexual side of it to the fore is less likely. But I think this handles it very well, definitely. Steve, what do you make of this one?
Yeah, it's very, very dark. I mean, but yeah, it's also very, very funny. But I think the point he's trying to get across, he's done really, really well. And you know, you do hear stories of this happening. You know, where Marvel or even say like George Lucas's, you know, people who are terminally ill let them watch the films early and stuff like that. And I don't know, the weird. I just think the weird thing is how the kid brings it up in a way. You know, it's just out of nowhere.
I think that's the absurdity of it, though. Yeah, you know, it's almost like there's no way he asked that question, but you know, the film needs them to articulate that in order for Jim Cummings' character to then have that sort of monologue. And I think it's very self-consciously kind of doing that. It's like the absurdity of why. So that's what this kid is worrying about, this particular point. It's like, no, I don't think he is, but you know, it's kind of a say this kind of comic scenario of being brought up. It was like, that's what he's going to ask.
yeah. But yeah, I thought it shot really well, and it does. It's definitely like a conversation starter. You know, it's shining the mirror back on Disney, and you know the way they're handling things, and not much Disney America, you know, and I thought it was actually done really, really well, but it was the darkness of it that kind of shot me as well. Just the actual what happens and well, even the whole scenario as well. You know, it's stark and it does grab your attention straight away. But yeah, I've seen a couple of things of his, like is it The Wolf of Snow Hall or something?
Yeah, Wolf of something Manor.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed that. I thought that was really good. I really want to see Thunder Order. I've not seen that yet. And the beta test, I've not seen yet.
I didn't like the beta test. I like the first one, The Wolf of whatever Manor. That was really good. But the
Wolf of Snow Hollow.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the beta test just wound me up the wrong way. It really did, because he's playing this really horrible sort of misogynist sort of character, and yeah, it's just like not an easy watch, basically. But yeah, I mean, funny enough, this is the sort of humor that England does particularly well. You know, this sort of like creating this sort of excruciating, dark scenario, and then sort of finding a bit of humor in it, like when he has to go back in the room and take the laptop, and he's sort of, you know, it's that sort of thing.
Well, Channel 4 sort of specialised in all that sort of stuff. Well, they did in the day, but anyway, there was a lot of that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
dark black comedy.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if this was in like an episode of Jam or Brass Eye or something like that. You know, a Chris Morris type thing.
Yeah, exactly, or The Office or something.
Mm.
Cool, awesome. Right, we don't score the shorts, but we do recommend you check them out, and we will put a link to this in the footnotes below. Go check it out. Our DTV throwback this week is El Chicano. A police officer discovers a conspiracy by a very nationalistic cartel to invade and reclaim California on behalf of Mexico. Not only that, but he discovers his deceased brother had turned away from his gang culture past and was becoming a mythical folk hero called El Chicano. Very interesting thing, this, guys. It starts out like a police procedural when they sort of turn up to this warehouse and there's all these sort of dead bodies, and it's like, oh my God, what the hell happened here, kind of thing. And it plays it quite straight. But as the film develops, and he sort of learns more about what his brother's been up to, and he discovers essentially the Mexican Batcave. And it sort of becomes this sort of like, you know, almost like a sort of Mexican version of the Punisher.
Definitely.
Towards the end of it, it's very well made. It's co-written and produced by Joe Carnahan, who did Cop Shop and Smoking Aces and the A-Team, things like that. And
Narc is the one that it reminded me of.
Yeah, and I really like this. The first half is a bit like 999 with Casey Affleck, and then it sort of develops into this sort of more kind of superhero-y kind of thing. You know, there's a vigilante superhero sort of scenario. It does start in media res, unfortunately, but you know, just typical for this sort of thing. Steve, what did you make of El Chicano?
Yeah, I enjoyed it because I'll be honest, I didn't know what to expect going in at all. I'd never heard of it. Didn't really look it up. Just went straight to Prime, put it on, and just let it go. And yeah, I was surprised in the direction it took. You know, you get the hint at the beginning with the
flashback sort of thing,
with when they're kids and what happened and stuff, and then it, like I say, it does go into like a police procedural, you know, taking on the cartel, blah blah blah, and then this just comes out of nowhere about his brother and that, and when he takes over the mantle, it kind of reminded me of like like say Punisher, and also like say a non-supernatural Ghost Rider in a way, you know, that kind of thing. But I thought the performance was really good. The action I thought was really, really good, especially like the rooftop scene near the end. And also in the club as well. I thought they were done really, really well. And yeah, I really enjoyed this one, to be fair. And I wasn't expecting it because, like I said, I didn't know what it was about or what I was getting into.
Yeah. Rich, how do you find this one?
Yeah, I was vaguely familiar with it. I think I had it sort of sitting. I'd come across it on like Prime and stuff. The poster. I'd seen it, but I'd never sort of looked into it or given it the time of day until you sort of suggested that we cover it. And I was so glad that that you did, because I thought this was great. My first thing was like, when did you watch it and how did you sort of discover it, basically? I wanted to sort of ask that. That was the sort of thing that I was thinking. I was like, where did you?
Yeah, well, somebody mentioned it online. Somebody sort of put a clip of it online, so mentioned it, and yeah, I hadn't heard of it, and I had it on my watch list, and eventually it turned up on Prime.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to sort of sit down and watch it. So I was glad it did.
Yeah, and so I start work. So I don't know anything about the film. I start watching it. The name Joe Carnahan pops up, like you say. So then I was like really invested. I was like, okay, right. This is not expected. So because I'm expecting this low budget, film about the Latin community in was it? I think it's Los Angeles, and I wouldn't have. I was like, whoa. So Joe Carnahan. Okay, so then I look into it. The director, it's his first feature. He's basically, him and Joe Carnahan are best friends. They've worked together for years. The director, Ben Hernandez Bray, also known as Ben Bray, he's done stunts on tons of Joe Carnahan's films going back years. They've done Grey, Stretch, Smoking Aces. He's had on-screen roles as well, but he's basically mainly been sort of stunt coordinating and things like that. And then because I didn't know what to expect from the film, like you, I was kind of taken aback when it goes in different directions. So it introduces the bike riding character at the start, and then sort of sets that aside for a significant amount of the running time.
Yeah, because it jumps forward 30 years, isn't it? You get that bit. It's like,
and it becomes this procedural. And what it made me think of, I mean, there were lots of different things that it made me think of, but the one I think that jumped to the fore of my mind before it turned into The Punisher was like Christopher Nolan and the Dark. Specifically, I was thinking of Dark Knight Rises with Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character. And the sort of journey
that's a good shout. Yeah, it does.
It's a really absorbing detective story, like you say, for the first part, and then it punctuates it with I think it's only a couple of action sequences or action moments, but they're really intense. I mean, they're just driving. It comes out in that classic sort of style. They just get completely ambushed, and it's just really well executed. And they're shooting at the car and stuff. That was one of the early moments. And it's working on a low budget. It's got a mostly unknown cast. We've got George Lopez in there. He's probably the most well known. It is a kind of quasi superhero kind of movie. That's what they were going for, and I think it's quite interesting that then if this was like 2018, like 4 or 5 years later, several years later, we got Blue Beetle, which is kind of trying to do the same thing, but in a much more mainstream way. And then George Lopez is also in that one, which I then tried to watch. I'm part way through it. I'm not really going with it, but I think it's quite an ambitious sort of bold project that they've tried to do with the Blue Beetle film, but I'm not 100% with it. But I really loved El Chicano. I think the Dark Knight Rises stuff, definitely a Christopher Nolan feel to it. Especially when you get to the end, because the end is basically like the Dark Knight. It's like this long lead in for a sequel that we haven't actually had yet. But yeah, the core story turns into The Punisher, and it's all really well executed, really great. Again, the guy the director is a stuntman, so he knows how to do all the stunt stuff.
Yep.
So the action's intense. We got the fight choreographer was Dan Risotto, I think. He did Jade, which we watched recently, as well as lots of other stuff. And the second unit director was a guy called Frank Torres, who has done films like Boss Level, which I also really liked.
Yeah, I like that.
And who else? What was that?
I've got Noel Guglielmi.
Yeah. So Noel G, who I talked about earlier, being in Cash Out, he turns up as Silent, one of the sort of peripheral characters in the story. So, again, always like to see him, and he's just got a good presence. Doesn't have a massive role, but he's there. And the guy who gets killed at the beginning, I think Emilio Rivera, Shadow. I'm sure I've seen him in stuff. He was quite good in that sort of. I think he's done. I'm just looking at his IMDb. He's done TV shows like Mayans MC, which I haven't watched, but I've definitely heard of that. But yeah, most of the cast, not people I'm familiar with, but everyone did a really solid job. I really like Jesus, I should say, played by Marco Rodriguez. I thought he was a great character. I just really, I really want them to make the sequel. It's definitely, you know, they've pulled in all the right elements, and they made it. I'd say, I wish if it had been I presume it wasn't a very big success. Otherwise, the sequel would have happened by now. But hopefully, it's kind of one of those films that will develop kind of a cult following, and will eventually get the continuation of the story. As it is, even though we haven't got it, I think it's okay. I mean, it's a long epilogue for something that hasn't really been fulfilled through. But at the same time, I'm still glad it kind of went there. Just another side note, another film that it reminded me of, which was made around the same time. This was 2018, and there was a film called Darkland, which we watched and reviewed, which was I think, hang on, just checking where it's from. So the Netherlands, Denmark. It was a Danish film about a guy who becomes a motorcycle riding vigilante.
Yeah,
you might remember that. We watched it so quite a few years ago. Again, sort of touches on similar themes that we've seen, and so I think if you like The Punisher, you're going to like this, but just set your expectations. It's going to be more of a Christopher Nolan version of The Punisher, where basically you're not going to see The Punisher very much. A bit like with like Dark Knight Rises and stuff. Batman was barely in it. It was mostly like procedural kind of stuff, but a lot of the time anyway. But so I was very, very enthusiastic. It's one of my favorite films that I've seen lately. I highly recommend going to check it out. It says online that it's like 2.5 hours long. Well, the version I watched wasn't.
No,
I'm not sure if that's a mistake or there's different cuts of the film. But anyway, it's out there. Go find it. Go check it out.
Absolutely. You can find it in the UK, at least on Amazon Prime. We certainly recommend you go check it out. That is the end of this week's show. So thank you for listening. Thank you to Steve and Rich for covering these films. Pity Steve, he didn't like Loop Track as much as I did, but never mind. But yeah, overall, I thought this was a pretty solid week. Don't forget to check us out on X and Facebook at the DTV Digest. Also check out the Short Shots, where we have a whole library of shorts that we've curated and put together for you all in one place. Other than that, thank you for listening. Tune in next time.
Thank you for listening to the DTV Digest. Let us know your thoughts in the comments and tune in again next time.